guys, it is me, Stace. Today I want to share with you my design team project for Maymay Made It. Now the theme this month for the design team is to emboss like a boss, and that means we need to emboss our projects this month. You can either use an embossing folder with a big shot or a Cuttlebug, or you can use a heat embossing gun with embossing powder. I chose both on this card, so you can see here the green layer is a dry emboss. This little whirl is done with an embossing powder. So there's the outside of the card, and then we have the inside. Alright, so to get started, for the base of the card, I chose red. This is 8.5 by 5.5. You want to score that at 4 1/4. Our green layer for the front, 4 by 5 1/4. The white layer for the inside is also 4 by 5 1/4. Now we have our layer pieces. Let me go and grab those. Alright, we have one that is 2 by 2 3/4. One that is 1.5 by 1 3/4. 2 by 2, then 1.5 by 3. And our layers of white that go on top of that, we have one that is 1 3/4 by 2.5, 1 1/4 by 1.5, 1 3/4 by 1 3/4, 1 1/4 by 2 3/4. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and grab all these guys and set these aside. And we're first going to stamp and do our embossing. The stamps that I'm using is called Winter Wonderland. We'll be using both of the snowman, the greeting that says Christmas is in the air, the little moose, and also the swirl. I'm going to bring in some scrap paper. Alright, so I already have all these images on my blocks. I'm going to grab the VersaFine ink. I'm going to ink up my large snowman. Ink him up really well, and he's going to go on this piece here. Just stamp him on the left side, straight down, straight up. Then we have this smaller snowman. He's going to go right next to the big one. Then straight down, straight up. Perfect. Okay, so there's our snowman. We can set that one aside. Right now we have the moose. I'm going to grab my other square. I'm going to take my ink pad to the stamp versus my stamp to the ink pad, just so I get better coverage. Ink it up really well. I'm going to go ahead and put them on here. Again, straight down, straight up. Okay, so there's a little moose. Then we have this piece for our embossing, and this is for the greeting. Now for the greeting, I am going to use my mini Misty tool. I already have my stamp in there where I want it to go. I'm going to put this in here. Use my magnets to hold that down. Take my green ink and just ink up the stamp. And I can bring it around and stamp my piece of cardstock there. Let's give it a good press. Love that. Okay, so the greeting is done. We can set that aside. So we have the greeting done, our snowmen done, and our reindeer. Next we're going to do the embossing. I'm going to bring in my little cutting board and my little embossing buddy. If you don't have this, you can just use a sock and fill it with either baby powder or cornstarch. All this does is dust the cardstock to remove some of the static. Alright, I'm going to close this ink up and my green one, and we're going to grab Versamark, which is basically a stamp pad that has the glue on it. I'm going to grab my little swirl, ink that up, and then stamp them down on that. Close that up. I'm going to grab my embossing powder. I'm going to grab this, pick it up very carefully, and I'm using a black embossing powder this time. Just going to sprinkle that on there. I'm going to tap off the extra. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm going to bring in my heat tool. I'm going to hold this down with my spoon here because it will get hot, and just emboss this until it becomes shiny. That is done. You can see it kind of raises it up a little bit and adds a really nice shine to it. Okay, we're done with all that. Now, I'm going to set that aside and work on our green layer that we're also embossing. But on this one, we're not going to be using an embossing folder. We're going to be using our trimmer to do the embossing for us. It's just a regular Cricut trimmer with the bone folder. I'm going to put this in. Again, this is 4 inches wide by 5 1/4. I'm going to line it up here at the 4-inch mark on my trimmer. Then come down every 1/4 inch. So I'm going to go to 3 3/4. Line that up. Score it. Go to 3 1/2. And score. So every 1/4 inch. You can also do 1/2 inch. Okay, so I'm at 2 3/4 now. Just keep on going. And you'll notice the cardstock is going to start to curl on us, and that's fine. So I'm at 2 inches, 1 3/4, 1 1/2. Now when I get to the 1 1/2 inch mark, I'm going to score that and then flip it around and go back and line it up again at 3 3/4. This way I can score the other side. Just make sure you're straight. And then just keep on going down until I'm filled. So now I'm at 3 1/2. 2 3/4. Get it lined up there. I'm at 3. And 2 3/4. And I think that's our last one. Yep. Okay, so you can see we have all of our lines there. I'm going to flip it over, and this is the embossed side. You can tell because it is raised. All right, let's go ahead and finish up our card. Oh, before I forget, these images, I did color these in. For those, I used the Spectrum Noir markers, and I just colored them in to save some time, but you can see they're both here. So for the snowmen, for the scarf on the big guy and the hat on the little guy, I used the color Lipstick. For the scarf on the little guy, I used the color Forest Green. For the noses on both, I used the color Nectarine. For the moose, I used the color Maple. I also used Lipstick for the bells, and I used Forest Green again for the scarf. Okay, so we can set those aside. Okay, so we're all done with that. Let's take our card base, crease on that, take the bone folder. This way it lays flat for you. Now, because this is curved, rather than using my art glitter glue, I'm going to use sticky strip. So I'm going to grab that over here, find the end of this. Okay, and I'm going to put the sticky strip right to the edge. This helps this piece lay down flat for us. Usually whenever I use an embossing folder, I do like to use a dry adhesive. This I'm able to get right to the edge. Okay, so that is all done. Take my bone folder and just kind of rub that. I think that helps make it stick better and helps the paper come off easier. I take the backing off of these guys. I mean, there are a lot of steps in this card and a lot of pieces, a lot of paper to cut, but I think it's a really pretty card. I wouldn't make a bunch of these. I'd maybe make a few to the really special people I'm going to give Christmas cards to. Alright, so I took all the adhesive off on the outside. I'm going to use the art glitter glue in the middle just to help hold down that middle piece. Lay this down. Get it straight and centered, hopefully on the first time, as I really can't pick this back up if I'm not. Alright, just give it a little rub around the edges. Okay, now I'm going to take these pieces and glue them on top. So I'm going to start with the larger red one. And I do want to have my glue go to the edge. Okay, I'm going to line this up in the upper left-hand corner, but trying to keep the same distance on the green on the left and the top. Okay, just like that. Next will be our 2x2 piece, and I will have all the sizes for these on Maymay's blog, which you will find a link for that below, my blog, and also in the description box below. Alright, so same idea. Line this one up on the left hand or the right hand side. Same distance, top and bottom. Making sure I'm straight with that one. Okay. Then we have this one. And you can play around with this. I have mine opening up top to bottom like a calendar. You can certainly go this way, just change the stamps you're using. So it's a really fun layout of a card because you can change it up all kinds of ways. Okay, and then just line this one up on the right hand side. Make sure I'm even with that piece and the bottom. If you're crooked, purposely go crooked. Okay, all right, so I think they're on there pretty good. Now we're gonna take all these guys, we're gonna flip them over and pop them all up. I'm using foam squares. I'm probably gonna use 5 on each one, all 4 corners and then one in the center. So yeah, like I said, to color them in, if you don't have the alcohol markers, you can use regular markers, you can use colored pencils, or you can just leave them black and white. You don't have to color them in if you don't want to. Okay, and then one more here in the middle. On the smaller guy, I'll probably just use 4. Okay, all right, grab all those guys, give them a squish. Okay, now we're gonna go and pop them on. Take the backings off. I find by squishing them first, it does help, at least I think, taking the backings off. All right, so I'm gonna lay this one on top of that one. I love the way the black pops, plus it's embossed, so it has that extra dimension to it, and it's also shiny. You can also emboss the green layer if you want to, or the greeting. All right, so get this guy on there, straight. Then our last part to making the card is to stamp that swirl on the inside. Okay, our last one here. So I guess question of the day, do you guys make a lot of, if you're a card maker, do you make your Christmas cards or do you buy them and just mail them out that way? If you make them, do you do a lot of embossing on them? Do you go all fancy with them? Do you keep them simple? Love to hear your thoughts. Okay, so the outside of the card is done. Let's do the inside. I'm gonna grab the VersaFine black ink. I'm gonna grab my little swirl. I should have cleaned it off first. Ink that up. I'm just gonna stamp him on the bottom right. Okay. Open up our card, flip this guy over, and glue him in. Okay. Alright, so glue that guy in there, and our card is done. So you can see we used an embossing powder for the swirl, and we created our own embossing folder by using our trimmer. So there's that card and there's that card. Also, don't forget, if you want to go to my blog, leave me a comment. I'll pick a winner tomorrow to receive the card kit, which basically means you receive the card, an envelope, and also all of the supplies to make the card. Any questions, guys, please let me know. As always, thanks so much for watching. Have a great day, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.